If Buddhism teaches there is no permanent self, then who dies? And why do we still fear death? It's a question that unsettles the heart. On the one hand, the Buddha's teaching of Anatta, no fixed, unchanging self, suggests that what we call me is just a collection of shifting processes, like a flame flickering, never the same from one moment to the next. If there's no permanent I, then death should be nothing to fear, and yet we do fear it, sometimes quietly, in the background of our lives, and sometimes with overwhelming intensity. Why does this paradox exist? Why does the idea of death still send shivers down our spine, even if we intellectually believe the self is an illusion? To answer this, let's begin where we all must begin, with the raw human experience of fear itself. Think about the last time you confronted death, not in theory, but in reality. Maybe it was at a funeral, standing before the body of someone you loved. Maybe it was a late-night thought, lying in bed when the mind whispered, "One day, I won't be here." Or perhaps it was the sight of your own reflection, noticing new lines of age, and realizing time is always moving forward. Fear of death is one of the most universal experiences. Some fear the pain of dying, others fear the unknown, what happens after. Still others fear the loss of identity. What happens to me, the person who feels, remembers, and loves? Pause for a moment and ask yourself, what part of death frightens you most? Is it the physical pain, the darkness of the unknown, or the sense that everything you are could vanish? This simple reflection shows us something. Fear of death isn't just about death itself. It's about what we believe we are, and that brings us to one of the Buddha's most radical teachings, the illusion of the self. The Buddha taught that what we call self is not a solid, unchanging entity. Instead, it's a collection of processes known as the five aggregates. 1. Form, the body, our physical existence. 2. Feeling, sensations of pleasure, pain, or neutrality. 3. Perception, the labels and recognition we place on experiences. 4. Mental formations, our thoughts, intentions, and habits. 5. Consciousness, the awareness that experiences all of these. Together, these aggregates create the illusion of a unified I, but like pieces in a flowing river, they're constantly changing. Imagine standing at the edge of a river. The water passes by, always moving, never the same from one second to the next. You cannot point to a single droplet and say, that is the river. In the same way, you cannot point to a body, a thought, or even awareness itself and say, that is the permanent self. Or think of a candle flame. The flame seems continuous, yet it's actually a chain of causes. Wax, wick, oxygen, heat. When one condition ends, the flame goes out. Death, in this view, is simply the ending of conditions. And yet, here's the paradox again. Even knowing this teaching, we still fear. Because while the self may be an illusion, it is a very convincing one. If the self is just an illusion, why do we still fear death? Shouldn't the knowledge of Anatta, no self, free us completely? The truth is, simply understanding a teaching doesn't erase millions of years of conditioning. Fear of death is deeply woven into our biology. Every cell in our body is programmed to survive. Our ancestors passed on their genes precisely because they ran from danger, clung to life, and fought to keep breathing. That instinct lives in us, even if we intellectually know there's no permanent I. Then there's attachment. We love, we create, we build, we cling to family, friends, dreams, and identities. Death threatens all of that. Even if there is no eternal self, we still feel the pull of wanting to protect my child, my partner, my work. Love and attachment make life rich, but they also make letting go painful. And finally, there are social bonds. We fear not only our own death, but the separation from those we love. Think of how devastating it feels to imagine not being there for someone who depends on you, or to face the thought of never again hearing the laughter of a friend. So even when Buddhism tells us the self is an illusion, the habits of survival, attachment, and connection keep fear alive. It's not a failure of the teaching. It's a reminder that wisdom isn't about erasing fear instantly. It's about transforming how we relate to it. And this is where the Buddha offered a profound gift. Rather than turning away from death, he invited us to turn toward it, not as a punishment, but as a teacher. Far from being something to dread, death can become one of the most powerful guides on the path. The Buddha encouraged a practice called Maranasati, mindfulness of death. It's not morbid, it's liberating. By contemplating death, we begin to see how precious and fleeting life truly is. Think of a flower. Its beauty lies not in lasting forever, but in blooming for a brief season. The petals open, radiant for a time, and then fall. If the flower never faded, would we notice its beauty with the same intensity? Or think of a sunset. Part of what makes it breathtaking is that it doesn't last. The colors blaze, then vanish into night. The impermanence is what makes the moment sacred. The same is true of our lives. Death isn't a thief of meaning. It's what gives life urgency and depth. Modern psychology supports this. Research shows that people who accept mortality often live with greater compassion, gratitude, and joy. It's called post-traumatic growth, when people emerge from brushes with loss not broken but stronger and more loving. In fact, studies show that reflecting on death can actually increase appreciation for life. Let's pause for a moment together. Think of a time when you lost someone or something important, maybe a loved one, a relationship, or even a dream. Painful, yes. But also, what did that loss teach you about the value of life? Did it make you more compassionate, more present, more grateful for each day? This is the heart of the practice. By letting death teach us, we no longer live in fear of it. Instead, we live more fully, more kindly, more awake. So how do we live with the reality of death without being consumed by fear? The Buddha offered 3 simple but profound practices. First, mindfulness of impermanence. Each day, notice how everything changes. The weather, your breath, the emotions in your heart. When you see change everywhere, death no longer feels like a shocking interruption. It feels like part of the flow. Second, compassion. Knowing life is short softens our hearts. When we realize none of us will be here forever, arguments matter less, and kindness matters more. Each smile, each gentle word becomes a gift we may never get another chance to give. Third, reframing death. Instead of seeing death only as an ending, see it as a teacher that asks, "This too will pass. So how do I want to live now?" Take a moment. Think of something you're holding on to, maybe resentment, maybe stress about a small problem. Imagine remembering, in that very moment, this too will pass. How might that change the way you respond? Living without fear doesn't mean pretending death isn't real. It means letting the truth of death guide us into living with more clarity, more love, and more courage. But the Buddha pointed to something even deeper. Karma, impermanence, fear, these belong to the cycle of birth and death. But beyond that cycle lies freedom. This freedom is called Nibbāna. The Buddha often used the image of fire. Every craving, every attachment, every illusion of self, it's like adding fuel to a flame. The fire blazes, feeding on whatever we give it. But what happens when the fuel is gone? The fire goes out. Not violently, not tragically, simply, naturally. In the same way, when craving and ignorance end, the cycle of rebirth and death has no fuel to keep it going. This is not annihilation, it is peace. It is freedom beyond both life and death. Imagine a lotus blooming in muddy water. Its roots are in the mud, but the flower rises above, untouched. That's what liberation looks like, living in the world, yet no longer bound by fear. And here's the encouragement: this freedom isn't reserved for saints. Each moment of letting go, each moment of mindfulness is already a taste of that liberation. So let's return to our question. If the self doesn't exist, why do we fear death? We fear because we cling to body, to identity, to relationships. We mistake a flowing river for a permanent self. But when we see impermanence clearly, when we let death become a teacher instead of an enemy, fear begins to loosen its grip. Death doesn't cancel life's meaning, it deepens it. It reminds us to live fully, love freely, and let go gently. Take a moment now to reflect. What seed of wisdom can your own awareness of death plant in you today? If this reflection touched your heart, I invite you to join me on this journey. Subscribe to this channel to keep exploring the Buddha's wisdom, lessons that help us meet life, death, and everything in between with clarity, compassion, and peace.